Hey guys, it's Ian at SS8000 Cars, and today we're going to look at the Porsche Panamera, the latest in the SS8000 Cars fleet, which was delivered shortly before Christmas, and we've now had time A, to do a number of miles in it, and B, to get a really good feel for what the car is actually like. There are quite a few idiosyncrasies with the car, I have to say, which clearly over the development cycle of the e-hybrid will get ironed out, and you have to understand how to get the best from the car. So when I started driving the car, as I alluded to in some of my earlier videos, really I was struggling to get 16, 17, 18 miles per gallon, and that was because I was charging the car on e-charge. And when you charge the car on e-charge, it allows you to do this whilst you're driving, but it sucks the fuel to effectively charge the batteries. So I've learnt not to do that, to use the charger in the garage, and although it takes between 4 and 5 hours to charge from zero, there's no question at all that it does that efficiently. The focus of the e-hybrid is to talk about the technology that is available today, and this technology is going to become mainstream, so we need to get behind it. Now, the first thing to say is that I have the car in the lower suspension setting, and I think it looks absolutely wonderful for such a big car. Now, this one's pretty fully loaded. I've got it in the metallic black with the sports design wheels in satin platinum, and I actually think they're a really good contrast to the black. Looked at all the different designs of the wheels. I liked the sports design, and I wanted something that wasn't going to be too much in your face, so I think the platinum in satin is just a great choice. I've had it as stealth as I can make it, in that we've gone for the black calipers rather than the green calipers, and we've also gone for the black Porsche sign on the rear of the car. No model designation, which I thought was quite nice. It's got the sports exhaust tips, so that's not the full sports exhaust system, but I do like the look of the 4 exhausts. I think that's so much nicer than just having one exhaust each side of the rear diffuser. Now, it's got a small rear diffuser. I'm not sure how effective that is, but nevertheless, it's to give as much ground hugging capability to the car as possible. And then I didn't go for the stealth rear lights because I rather like the way that Porsche designed their rear light cluster, and I like the colour scheme of it. Now, this car has the sports design pack. Now, again, it can be quite confusing when you're looking at the car from the spec sheet, because really the sports design pack didn't look that dissimilar on the configurator to the standard item. And of course, it's about a £3,500 option, depending on whether you go for the painted black inserts, which I'll show you in a second. But it is well worth it. When you actually see it in the flesh, it makes a huge difference. Okay, so what does it give you? The first thing it gives you is the extra lip at the front here and a slightly lower stance. Okay, it has additional lights, so normally the lights from the standard pack are integrated into the center here. What we have is lights on the outside and the inside. Now, these are your side lights effectively. And then a slightly more aggressively designed front splitter, I guess. All this is through to the active aero panels behind, which open at speeds above 70 to channel air through the car, provide extra downforce. Then it also gives you the side skirts painted in the colour of the car. So you can opt for the side skirts, but they'd be in matte. Whereas if you get the sports design pack, the side skirts are painted in the car, and that makes a big difference. It's the same at the front. The bottom part of the spoiler is all in metallic gloss black rather than being matte. You can also have all this part painted in gloss black as well. I elected not to, didn't really totally understand the significance. If I was doing it again, maybe I would go for the gloss back, and the same is true of the window surrounds. Again, I didn't really totally understand why you would pay £500 to have gloss black window surrounds, but now I see it, maybe I would tick that box. And then at the back, the sports design package also gives you the rear diffuser, the grille above the rear diffuser, and then all the paintwork all the way around the exhaust systems and along the back here, which is incorporating the parking sensors. That is all painted in the colour of the car. So again, it's the metallic black effect, and I do honestly think that looks so much nicer. Coming round to the front, you can see that we've got the LED lights with matrix beam and Porsche dynamic light system combined. Now, what this does is it has the capacity to be able to automatically tell where the cars on the other side of the road are. It can then keep your lights on full beam, but black out where the oncoming car is. It's a very, very clever system, and these are the best lights on any car that I have ever come across. Now, this car has privacy rear glass, which I think quite important if you're going to put stuff in the rear. And it also has a full panoramic sunroof, which I'll show you better from the inside. But if we open up the car, you can see this is club package leather interior, which is the very soft feel leather in truffle brown. Again, when I saw this on the configurator, I thought it was going to be darker. Overall, I really like the effect. As you can see, it's got the Alcantara roof lining, and I've got the front glass roof showing. The carbon interior package not only replaces the black piano wood effect which you get as standard, but it also inserts the silver parts here to match up with the door pulleys, and very effective it is too. You can also see that all your memory controls are on the door, which is very sensible. In the X3 they're actually down next to the controls for the seat. These are the full 18-way electric sports seats, and I think they look fantastic. I mean, they've got the extra wide bolsters here at the shoulder level. If the truth be absolutely known, you don't actually tend to have your shoulders against there because you're sitting slightly forward. But it's also extra bolsters around the leather here and here. And that's really nice, holds you in place, super comfy. I've found when travelling to London, this is the most comfortable car I've ever owned. Fairly traditional key. It's sort of shaped in the design of a car. So it's open, shut, and access the boot. The boot is obviously electric. Probably wouldn't expect anything else on this type of car. It's big. It's decent size, and the fixed cover, as I've said in the past, although not quite as flexible, perhaps literally not quite as flexible as the roll cover that you get, because obviously the roll cover you can stack your stuff up. This is actually designed so that it gives you a slight arch over the stuff you might be putting in the back. So if you're putting fixed cases in, obviously they'd have to be down at the level here. Sorry, at the level here. But if you're putting coats and stuff, it allows you to put softer stuff, and then they just go under the shelf, which I think is a nice touch. Obviously, they've given quite a bit of thought to this. I'd like to show you the e-charge socket. Obviously, on the other side, you have the petrol cap, fairly standard, but here is where you input the electric charging unit, and it's quite quick. I mean, you know, if I've got 4 or 5 range left, it'll do it in 4 hours. Have a little look in the engine compartment. Trouble is, all these engines are covered these days. So, a couple of things worth mentioning. It's not as far back as it was in the Ferrari FF. So the Ferrari FFs was actually set behind the front wheels to give that sort of front mid-engine type configuration. And then you had the second gearbox on the Ferrari right at the front. I suspect that overall handling on the car is not quite so critical as it would be on the Ferrari, and it's a decent looking engine, although again, you know, you're losing most of it because it has a plastic cover. It's got a good roll bar across the center. Make sure the car is as rigid as possible, but it's all very, very much out of sight. One thing that I was quite impressed with is it has a rubber all the way round it, so the actual engine is contained within quite a small area. So from here to here with obviously rubber to seal it, and then obviously the rubber seals on this part here, and it's a 2.9 V6 twin turbo producing 330 brake from the engine and another 136 from the hybrid, from the electric motors, which actually gives a total of 462. Not quite sure how they work that, but that is the total that they claim for the car. And massive amount of pounds per torque of 540, 550. And the car is very quiet inside, so it obviously works. Shuts with a reassuring thud. I opted for the heated steering wheel, which is activated by this button down here, which is that is really nice. In fact, ironically, I don't use the heated seat because I just don't need it, but the heated steering wheel I use all the time. So got the cup holders, the covers, so they're really quite neat. You push them down, put your thing in, and then you can probably see there, you just push the button and it comes back up, and I just think that's a neat touch. And then you've got your cubby hole in here. I've got the got my phone, and I've also got the immobilizer in there as well. If we get into the car, and I honestly don't think I have ever sat in a car that has as much presence is the word for it, really. So here, obviously, it's set up at the moment to show which radio station you're on. It has I opted for the 6-disc CD player, which I find quite useful. I mean, so you can use your phone, obviously, but I tend to just throw in the CDs that I have, unless I'm traveling with my wife, who uses her phone. And then you've got the different options. So you've got the heated seats. We can roll this forward, which brings quite a lot of light into the inside. So again, we can move over. Everything's touch, so we can move over to setting up the climate. You can see the centre vent has opened. That obviously closes when the ignition is off. And your 2 heated seats here. And then one of the things I do like is the rear blind behind the rear seats, and I think that's rather smart. You tend to use that in town a bit, actually, when I don't want people to see through the car. I rather like that. It was an option I went for. Didn't go for it on the sides, and again, it's a very neat little system. It's all incorporated into the section in front of the fixed compartment cover, the luggage compartment cover. It's a lovely feel to it. In the front, on some of the buttons, which I'll show you in a minute, there is almost like a button below the touch screen, although obviously there isn't. It's set up to make you feel like you just pushed a button, which is nice. It just gives some interest to the guys in the rear, and they can set things up sort of that they want them. Everything's nice and leather lined. Even the back of the chairs are all leather lined, rather like that. And it's a nice view from the back. Getting in the car, of course, is really lovely and easy. So now you can see we've got 23 miles on the e-hybrid system. I used it yesterday. Now, one of the things that I have found is that if I go into hybrid now, although you've got your settings here, it's to say you've got individual settings, so you can set it up specifically for yourself. And you've also got the extra control here. Starts in E mode always, and then you just twist it to Sport Plus. I've actually not tried Sport Plus. Sport is fine. I quite often use Sport on the way up to London because it gives me the opportunity to keep the engine on. The electric motors do not work when you're set in Sport or Sport Plus. Only work in the hybrid settings. But if you go to hybrid on the central screen, you can see now that the E-range is almost up to the top, although in theory it should be higher than that. I'm not quite sure why that is. But you've also got the settings, E-Power, Sport Plus as before, but under Hybrid Auto this time you've got E-Hold and E-Charge. What I found, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you have the settings in E-Charge, it just destroys your fuel consumption. Whereas if I use the engine at the speeds when you're getting your best fuel consumption, so you get between 30 and 35 on this at sort of 70, 80 on the motorway, using the engine the whole time, and then you use your e-motors when you're in town, so you're cutting back on your emissions at the point where it matters. Yesterday, coming back from London, I ran out of e-power, so I was having to use the engine from time to, or at least the car was using the engine from time to time. But at one point, I was actually averaging 50 miles per gallon. And that allowed for the fact that I was in town at standstill, especially on the way back, because the traffic was heavy. So that is what I want this car for. So if I can get my full 31 range, which I'm led to believe is going to happen when the car is running, I'm really looking at my London trips on a car this size of being certainly 45, which is what I ended up with yesterday, but I reckon nearer 50 miles per gallon. So we'll continue just running through the center console here. Obviously I've got the air conditioning system set up literally in auto. You've got your heated seats. Now, when you push this, even although this panel is solid, when you hit the heated seat, it feels like there's a button below it. One of my criticisms of touch screens is you really have to look very carefully at what you're touching. You don't need to take your eyes off the road here at all, because you can feel it. You can feel that you've got it in place. It's absolutely lovely, and it's the same with the air recirculation. It's air conditioning max, with the two defrost modes, so you've got your heated rear windscreen and your front screen. It's just nice. So these buttons here though are touch button, so they don't have anything below them. You literally just touch that and you're straight into the into your phone. In this case you've got your hybrid, which I showed you before. Climate, same, is really just a duplication of the screen that we saw in the rear. Got your car information, so you can pull up all the information. You go into controls, got all your different vehicle information. Really, you've got my rear roll-up blind. That is a little bit of a nuisance. If I want to put up the blind in the back, I've got to go through 2 levels of screen to get to it. So I've got to go into car, I've got to go into control, and then I've got to press roll-up rear blind. But you know, you've got all your system information. So your units, your voice control, your language, your software updates. Go back to factory settings. Everything is controlled to go back by pressing that button there. You've got your displays. So you've got your brightness, your instrument cluster display. All this information is set up for you, and it's easy to operate. Go back to a small Windows screen, which is your instrument cluster display. Back to home, shows you what you've got set up on the system, and back to nav. So it is really incredibly intuitive. I mean, it's so easy to operate. And when I first spoke to the guys when they were going through the instruments on the car on the way before I drove it home when I picked the car up, it all seemed incredibly complicated, but it genuinely isn't. And then you have your cruise control, you have your indicators and lights, you have your windscreen wipers, and of course you've got nice little metal gear change selection. We have lane change assist in the car, which is that top part of the in the actual unit, in the wing mirror unit itself, lights up to let you know that there's somebody in your 3/4, which I pointed out before, but I think it's an absolute lifesaver. That this key is obviously not the actual key, because the key is there, and this has to be in the car to start the car. But over here, I think sometimes if you look through the window, it might look like somebody's left the key in the car. Forgetting now. So I hope that does give you a feel, guys, for the overall car. And it's obviously we're going to learn more about it, but having gone through a period of slight frustration in terms of the range, in terms of not being able to charge the car whilst you're driving without halving or even a thirding your fuel consumption, now to a point where for me, and I think it's always about how it benefits you, for me, I can do the London journey up and down from here, average 45 plus miles per gallon, and there's enough power in there for the electric mode in the built up areas, which is really exactly what I wanted. When these cars provide 60 plus range, or even more than that on hybrid, then they're really going to be bought by a lot of people. I think right now the range is not quite enough to entice a lot of people to get in these, because, you know, with the government allowances, they're not that expensive. This is considerably cheaper than the Panamera 4S, and the Panamera 4S without the combined HP outage is less powerful. Now, some of the options are different, so you can't take the list price like for like, but overall with the same options, this is a cheaper car than the 4S. And I suppose my only real downer on the car would be the weight, but you don't really notice. I had a couple of country lane drives, not pushing it too hard, but it handles well for such a big car. I will do a session on things I like about the car and things I dislike about the car at a later date. Okay guys, well, it's Ian from SS8000 Cars signing off. I hope you found the video informative.